Welcome, everyone. This is the current installment in our series of webinars. And these webinars are either overviews to introduce people to ClubExpress, or they may be deep dives into particular features or functions within ClubExpress. Or coming up, I believe, on April 4th, we're doing an overview, but it's going to be centered on how bicycle clubs and organizations are using ClubExpress to facilitate their particular needs, whether they be rallies or events or whatever. It's nice to see how some of these vertical markets are using ClubExpress to help with their initiatives. For today, I'm going to deal with the donations module. And let's just take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Victor from our support and development team is monitoring the chat and answering questions as they come in. And at the end of my presentation, we'll revisit the chat session and go over some of the questions that were asked and perhaps answered, maybe drill down on them. And this way, the people that are watching a recording later on will be able to see what's going on. A recording of this webinar will be available. If you look at the ClubExpress homepage, there's a resources tab. And on the resources tab, there's a webinar tab, and it has the schedule for the current and upcoming webinars. And at the bottom, we have recorded webinars. So we have it listed by recent webinars. And so you'll see that 2 weeks ago, Dan did a webinar on the version 7.6 update, and he talked about all the new features and such. So if you missed that webinar, you can just click here and watch it on YouTube. And we also have webinars by function, so you can look at it that way. And also we have video tutorials. So the video tutorials are generally fairly short videos. And not surprisingly, just last week, we published a video on the donations module. It's a little 12-minute overview of the functionality of donations. And we're going to be going into pretty much everything that's in that video today and drill down a little bit more and answer questions, and also show a little bit about additional charges. And the other thing is, as long as you're on the ClubExpress, there is a page called clubexpress.com/reviews. If you're using ClubExpress, and particularly if you like ClubExpress, please go to clubexpress.com/reviews and enter your review onto one of these review sites. For Review My AMS, as a matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, we are doing a special introductory webinar for small staff associations. And this is going to be geared towards organizations that have little or no professional staff. I mean, you might have a CFO, you might have a comptroller, but most people's money is handled by the treasurer for that year. And so we're going to be talking about how ClubExpress helps organizations that mostly depend on volunteers to do their jobs. So let's talk about donations in general. The donations module, the donations function in ClubExpress, lets you establish funds, and people, whether they be members or non-members, can contribute to those funds. It's pretty flexible in that you can control who gets to see the funds, what the target amount, if there is one, whether or not that's visible, and whether or not you're accepting donations that are to be reported as anonymous. And like other things in ClubExpress, donations are processed through the same payment mechanism that's used for processing membership and renewals and events and additional charges. It all goes into one payment screen, and people can choose to pay for all the things that they have outstanding. And one thing that was added, I don't know how recently, but this is an important thing, is on the admin side, this function also allows clubs to track and report on non-cash donations. So if people give you a piece of equipment, if people donate property and things like that, we can catalog that and report on that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the things that I hope to demonstrate is both financial and non-cash donations. We'll show how to make a donation from a member, from a non-member, and as an admin or coordinator. And then we'll look at how to set up donations, how to add and edit a fund, how to look at donations for the fund. We'll view and edit and and look at the payments for them. We'll look at some of the reports. We will look at the non-cash donations aspect of it. We'll look at the reporting and exports. And sort of a related approach is whether you want to accept donations as additional charges. Well, let's call it contributions as additional charges to differentiate from donations. And we'll talk about that a little bit. All right, let's go to our typical demo club. This is the fictitious Northwest Balloon Club. And you'll see that the donations module has been put on the menu. I'm assuming that some of you already know how to put things on the menu. If not, by all means, speak up and I'll show you how it's done. But this is going to be on both the public-facing menu and on the member-facing menu. So if you look up here, you see that it says member login, so you know I'm not logged in at the moment. And if I click on donations, it shows 1, 2, 3, about 6 funds that are here. And you can see that the fund has a name, it's got a description. Some of the funds have a target goal over here for, say, this one, $5,000, and it's showing the progress towards that goal, but not all of them are doing this. And if somebody wants to donate, they can donate right now. But again, they're only seeing 6 funds because these 6 funds are not flagged as member only. And if they want to donate, they can just click over here. And the system says, well, are you a club member? If you are, log in to contribute, because this way the contribution can go against your account. And of course, if you forgot how to log in, there's a link for that too. But if you're not a member, you can start putting in your name and address and all that stuff here. But if you've already either made a donation or you're already on the mailing list or you've attended an event, but you're not a member, you can click over here and let's see if we can find you in the non-member database. So if I click over here and I go jdectol@gmail.com and John, if I search there, so sure enough, John Dectol has already been here. And so he can then proceed with the contribution details, the date, the time, and such. We're going to do that as another contribution in a moment. But this is the way it would then proceed. So that's a non-member making a contribution. Now I'm going to log in as a member because I'll continue from there. So I'm going to log in as Jenny. So Jenny Cho. And now you'll see that there are more funds available, not just the first 6 funds. This shows all of the funds that are available and active. There may be funds that are not active and they won't show up in this list. But she gets to see all of the active funds, both the things that are available to the public and those that are available to the members. So for the moment, let's assume that she wants to make a contribution. So this one here is for fly-in hosting. So the Balloon Club has an annual fly-in event, and they are asking for donations to help with those expenses, whether they be lodging expenses or just whatever is necessary to help support this year's regional fly-in event. So if she says donate, of course it knows who it is. So the date is filled in automatically. We can have a suggested amount. She can change this, so maybe she wants to do $99. And she can fill in any amount that she wants. I think there may be a cap on it. It may be a $3,000 or $5,000 cap. I'm not positive. And if they're not sure what they need to do, they can come over here to the Page Tools widget and choose Help. So your members can know what all the screens are. And we'll come back to Help in a little bit as to how useful this can be. The contribution in field is useful for things like in honor of, in memory of, in thanks to John Smith. And then the comment here could be looking forward to this year's events. And now we have the option, because it was set up this way, the user has the option of whether or not we want this to be reported as an anonymous contribution. So right down here, it says, how do you want your name to appear? But if you choose anonymous, that field goes away. So we'll just call this, we want it to be reported as Jenny C. Then the question is, do we want to notify somebody about this donation? And so it might be that you want to notify someone if you're making a notification in memory of someone. You might want to send it to their family or so. And in that case, you would put in the information here, and anything with a red dot means that's required. So you'd put in that information here. Similarly, if it's set up that it allows matching gifts, say you have an employer that's going to match your gift. Well, if you either say yes or not sure, it's going to ask for the information. It's going to ask whether or not you're going to mail the form. Now, it turns out that ClubExpress isn't going to be following up for you. We're not mailing anything automatically to the people in this list, but you're going to be looking at the information and then determining who you need to contact or such. But ClubExpress is not going to automatically send out anything. But this will at least let you know who you're supposed to contact or who your employee is going to contact. Because the employee says, hey, I'm not going to mail the form, then maybe you need to follow up on it. And then let's say no here, and then we would proceed to payment. Now, as soon as you proceed to payment, the member has committed to making a donation. So even if they cancel right now, they have still recorded a donation. And so what we can do is we can say, yes, I want to make a payment now, or no, I won't pay now. Your users will be able, it turns out Jenny is a coordinator of this function. Your normal users would get a credit card or send in a check choice, because it's pretty much, or maybe pay by PayPal, depending on whether or not that's set up. So they select how they're going to pay. And in this case, let us assume that this was another member. They would select, I'm going to send in a check or a credit card, and they could make a payment. I'm going to cancel the payment for the moment, but you'll notice when we look at it in a little bit that this $99 donation is going to be recorded as a donation. So we're canceling the payment. We are not canceling the donation. It's just saying that Jenny is not prepared to pay right now. And if there was other things that Jenny owed money for, whether it be an event or registration renewal, that would show up on this list, and she could just check the things that she was trying to pay for with this particular payment. So I'm going to cancel that for the moment. And now we're going to log in as a different user. Now, this is something that you may or may not have noticed in the last couple of weeks. You now have this choice to log in as a different user rather than logging out and then trying to log in again. This is useful particularly for people that have family accounts or people that are sharing a computer in an office. So I'm going to come in here and go M. Smith, and Marty Smith is an administrator. Okay, so Marty, it turns out, also owes money. And we can tell that by this new message that comes up. That's also part, I believe, of the 7.6 upgrade. And so we have a dollar sign that shows up to next to his name, a payment due over here, and this less than subtle pop-up message that says, oh yeah, you owe some money. So let's say, yes, I want to make payment now, just to take a look at what his payments are. And so sure enough, about a week ago, Marty made a donation to the fly-in hosting event, and he pledged $25. But it turns out that he made a donation. He made a partial payment. He paid $15. And so I could come in here and say, oh, okay, I'm going to pay $5 towards this. And I'm going to say that we received cash. Because I'm an administrator here, I can say that we actually got the money. I handed this to the treasurer. So I received cash, and I'm going to record the payment. I'm going to log out and log back in again. And sure enough, I owe $5 on that. It says due is $5, and I could pay for it. So what I'm going to do now is because I'm an administrator, I'm going to make a donation. Now, because I'm logged in as an administrator, when I log in, I get some additional options. We didn't see these before. So as an administrator here, I can choose to make a contribution for myself as a member. I can record a contribution that somebody else made. So say somebody came to an event and says, okay, I want to give you some money towards this fly-in event. And so what you would do is you would click on record another member's contribution, and then you would select the member. If I were to search for that, and then we know who it's for. And then you proceed just as if the member had put it in themselves. Or you can record a non-member contribution. And the non-member contribution does the same thing here, where you can enter the information, or you can do a search on the non-member database. And so you get that information. So this is just because you are an administrator or coordinator of this function. So I'm going to make a contribution myself, for myself. And I'm contributing to the fly-in hosting. Unlike everybody else, an administrator can change the date of the contribution. For everybody else, it just shows today's date. And so here I'm going to put in, well, let's make it $110. And I'm going to make this in recognition of the sport of ballooning or whatever comments they want to make. In this case, I'm making it for myself. And do I want to report it as anonymous? No, I just want to say this was by Marty S. And do I want to notify somebody? I could say yes, and that person will be notified. The person who's in charge of this fund, if there is one, also gets notified. But I'm going to say no at the moment, and there's no matching gift. And if I proceed to payment, we'll see that I still have $5 from the previous donation and $110. So if I want, I can say, oh, I'm going to pay this $5. I want to check that. I want to pay this $5. And on this one here, I want to pay $20. Because that's all I've got in my checking account at the moment. So it's going to show that the total is $25, part of it for the old donation, part of it for the new donation, and say, okay, we received the check, and it's check number 12345. And we record the check. And so it's showing the receipt. People can print the receipt and such. So that's how a donation is made, at least a monetary donation is made. Let's take a look at the way you set up donations. So there are two ways to do it. One is you can go to any donations page, and if you're an administrator or a coordinator, you can come over here and click on Edit, or you can go up to the control panel, and on the Money tab, there's donations. I think it may also be on the People tab. So you go to Donations. And what this will do is this will show you all of the funds. Now, because this is a demo site, the site's been around for years, we've got a lot of funds. And what I've done is I've marked a whole lot of them inactive so that they don't show up. You can see I've got, about 30 funds here. And you might take a fund and make it inactive if it was a time-based fund. It may be something that you're putting up once a year, or maybe you have a yearly fund drive So like the 2015 annual fundraiser, or what we're just calling fly-in hosting. Maybe when we retire this fund, we'll call it the 2018 fly-in hosting and make a new fly-in hosting fund starting from scratch again. So in this list here, we see the fund name, when it was established, whether it's active or inactive. If it has a goal, it's listed here. If it doesn't have a goal, it's listed as 0. It shows the number of donations and the amount received so far. And the amount received so far includes both donations that were entered into the system by users clicking on the donation link and any money that you sort of primed the account with. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. Then there are some choices here to edit the donation, the donation container, the bucket, as it were. We can look at the individual donations. We can copy it to a new donation, and there are some reports. But let's just add a fund. So if I add a fund here, what's the fund name? We'll call this the Mary Ross. We'll call it the Education Fund. And what's its purpose? Nice to know what people are contributing to. Contributions pay for demonstration and training. We can say when this fund was established. We'll just use today's date. And okay, who's the fund coordinator? So if I say Cho, let's say that Jenny is the fund coordinator, so she'll be notified when anybody makes a donation to this fund. Well, if I check this off, to notify when the donation is made. We get to determine whether it is active or not. If it is active, it will appear on the list and can accept donations. If it's not active, it doesn't appear on either the public side or the member side. So we'll say, yes, this is active. Do we want this to be available only to members or to everybody? So if we say it's available to members only, then it won't show up to the people that are not logged in. So we'll leave this as available to everyone. Do we want to allow anonymous? Oh, sure, why not? And do I want to suggest an amount? Well, if you come in, let's suggest an amount of $20. And is there a goal amount? Well, let's assume that we want maybe a $4,000 goal. And do we want to show the goal amount and the progress towards that amount? Oh, sure. The external amount received field is used to say, listen, we've already gotten some money in. This may be rolled over from last year, or someone just gave us a big check that's not been processed by this system. So let's say that we already got a check for $500. Then what you've got is the financial account that it goes into, which we'll just use the master donations. If you're using QuickBooks, it will ask you for the QuickBooks item name, and that will work with the QuickBooks integration. And for non-members who are entering, what non-member category do you want to put this in? And so donor is a typical category for that. So if I save this, it shows up at the top of the list. Now, if I didn't want that, if I go back to donations here, now we get this at the top of the list. But what if I didn't want it at the top of the list? I can come back here and go to the display sequence and say, oh yeah, we really want the fly-in hosting to be the real big thing. So let's move this down Mary Ross Education Fund right next to the Bill Williams Memorial Fund. So now it's been rearranged. And if I go back to donations, you'll see it's been moved down here. So right now it's showing its description, it's showing its progress towards the final goal. I'll go back to the fund administration. So we got a couple of other things. We have donation defaults. So what do you want the donate button text to say? Well, you'll notice that sometimes we're using the word donate and sometimes we're using the word contribute. And it turns out that we actually had some clubs and some organizations saying, no, we do not accept donations, but we do accept contributions. There may be some semantic or maybe some legal differentiation, but here's where you could change what's going to be said on the text itself. And for the non-member cash category, for non-cash donations, what category do you want to use for them? Let's go back in here, and we'll get to non-cash donations a little bit. And so let's take a look at the donations that have already been made for the fly-in hosting fund. So if I just click on edit, this is going to bring up a screen that's the same as adding a fund. So it's edit a fund. And here's where you could change things. You could change the purpose of the fund. You can determine whether it's active or not, decide from this point on whether or not you want to allow anonymous. So you can make all those same edits that you made while setting up the fund originally. And to look at the donations themselves, you click on this icon here, the donations icon. By the way, for those of you that never noticed it, there's a little icon at the top of the maintain column that shows you the icons and what each one of the icons means.
Hi, Alan.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's worth noting that what you just clicked on is just a legend.
Right.
Clicking on any of those are not buttons that you can click on. It's simply just a legend.
That's right. And this shows up in a lot of different places. For example, if we go to the calendar, there's also a legend here, which in this case pops up what your different colors are for your different event categories. So I like looking at these legends, but these legends here very often go overlooked. So if I click on donations, we're going to see all of the donations for this fund. And we will see that for today, over here, one came in from Jenny Cho and one came in from Martin Smith. So Jenny pledged $99 and Martin Smith pledged $110. Now, Jenny hasn't paid anything, so her status is not paid. Because her status is not paid, we can do a couple of things. One is we can go in and edit it and correct things if she told us she made a mistake. Because it's not paid, we could just cancel the donation entirely. If someone's paid it partially, you can't delete it because there's a payment against it and there's a transaction and all of the associated bookkeeping. Or we could go in and say, oh, she sent us some money. And so we can actually make a payment for her. And we can say, oh, okay, she handed us $50. So we come up here and say she handed us $50. And we can record the cash payment. Say handed cash to Sally. And so now, if we were to look at this, she should owe $49. If there was more than one that was not paid, you could click over here and delete all of the unpaid donations for a fund. So if it's particularly useful if you've got a whole lot of duplicates and such, you don't have to go through them one at a time. You can just delete all of the ones that are not paid, and it's as if they never existed. So you're seeing that some of them are anonymous, some of them are paid in full. And of course, we can come in here and add a donation directly into this fund, the same as if we had clicked on it on the donation screen. So I'll just back out of that. So I'm going to return to previous page. And we have reports about each individual donation fund. So if I click over here and I say, I want to see donations by name, it's going to show all of the people and how much their donation is for and whether or not it is paid in full. Now, what I don't seem to see is a report that shows you how much is owed by a particular person. So Jenny, she made this $99 here, and she just paid some of it. So this doesn't show you what they owe, but this shows you how much, in effect, the fund has been promised. And I believe if we were to go back into the control panel and go into money reports, I think it would be transactions by account. And if I look at the master donations, and if I look at it just for this year, we should be able to see the actual payments that have been made. And so you could maybe export this to a spreadsheet, and you could actually see the payments that were made. But Victor, I'm not sure if there is a report in the system that shows how much, in effect, what your accounts receivable are for a particular fund. But this information would help to get it.
Actually, if you go into the control panel under the Money tab
Yeah.
and go to Transaction Search, the top one there,
Okay.
and then you can hit Search.
Right, but
And that should
this,
show you
yeah,
what's
so let me
unpaid.
see if I go for show. Okay, so it's showing that there's $99 and $49 is due. So this is a way of finding out for any individual person, but this is not saying we've got $5,000 promised for a fund and we've received 2,500 of it so far. But there are ways of finding out what you're looking for, but I'm going to add a wish list report for that to say, show me who still owes me money for this fund.
There's an actual report under Money.
Oh,
If you go
yes?
to Member User Transactions, Pending Transactions by type and date. And there, if you scroll down to Donation, you'll see what's due.
Yeah, but again, it's not telling me which fund it's for, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just looking for an accounts receivable type of report. But this is the kind of thing that, I mean, these reports have grown up and maybe no one's ever asked for that before. But yes, there are a number of ways of finding out some of the information, but I just happen to notice that there's a report that I'd like to see. So I'll put it on the wish list. Meanwhile, going back to the donations module, so that's the reports for a particular fund. There are also reports across funds. Donations sorted by fund and name. So if we do that one, it will show the 2010 fly-in, the memorial fund. So it's going to show you a list of all of the funds and how much has been promised to them. And it also shows that, you know, some of them are paid in full and some of them are partial payment. So this is a good way of getting a summary of the funds themselves. So those are across all funds.
There's another report there too.
Yeah.
So if you go into reports there, go to Pending Donations.
Pending donations. So this will give you the pending donations. So this is a good report. So this one, unlike what I was asking for before, was a report about a particular fund. This looks like it's going to give me the pending donations across all of the funds. So that will get us most of the way there. And this would be particularly useful if you exported it to a spreadsheet where you could sort just the fund you're looking for and such. That's a very nice report. Thank you, Victor. And if you want to make a new fund that's a copy of a previous fund, so say I could rename this one to the using the edit button to name it 2018 fly-in hosting, and I want to set up a new fund, I could click on the copy icon, and I would put in the new name here, change the purpose if need be, make whatever changes you need, and then when you save it, it just shows up as a new fund. Same as if you clicked on Add Fund and filled in all of that information. Now, it's just copying the specifications, just copying the properties of the bucket. It's not copying any of the donations. All right. Next thing, and we'll make this fairly quick, what do you do about non-cash donations? So with non-cash donations, only administrators and coordinators can log a non-cash donation. There is no mechanism for a user to say, I'm making a non-cash donation. So you're going to record a non-cash donation. So if we come over here, non-cash donations can go into different categories. And if you click on categories, you can, of course, add a category by clicking on Add Non-Cash Donation Category. But here we've got a few that are already defined: ballooning equipment, building supplies, electronic equipment. And because this one called Chase Team Equipment has nothing posted against it, we could delete it if we want. So if I go to make a new non-cash donation, say I'm going to make a donation for somebody else, and Manny gave us a radio. We'll go GMRS portable radio. And once again, you can decide whether or not it's going to be anonymous. And so if we save that, we can see that Manny Smith gave us an electronic equipment, and there are reports that you can run on this by date, for example, and we should see Manny's GMRS portable radio. Now, one thing that it does not do, you'll notice we're not capturing any financial information about this. We're not capturing the value of this. And that's because we're not supposed to capture the value. Whoever makes a donation, if they want to claim its value as a charitable contribution or something like that, or a deduction for their tax purposes, they establish the value. They're the ones that are submitting the value on behalf of whatever forms they're doing. And then the governing body, like the IRS, will determine whether or not that's a reasonable value for it. But ClubExpress and your club should not be trying to establish values on non-cash donations. So that's pretty much it for donations. But there is something that's a little, we'll call it related. And that is, there's another way of asking for money. A donation is saying, here's a fund that you can contribute to. The other approach to doing this is using what's called the additional charges module. So if we come over to the control panel and we go to the People tab, there's a thing called additional charges. Now, additional charges might be for things like an initiation fee or a late fee or something like that. Well, what we can do is we can make up, I think I've got one here. I made one here. Okay, I made up one here called a fly-in donation. So if you want to add a charge, you just come up here and we'll call it a building fund donation. Help us renovate our building. And if I choose active here and make this adjustable, then we can put in whatever price we want to suggest. So let's make it $60. And who do we want to make this available to? We want to make it available as optional. It can either be not available, optional, or required for new members or renewals. So if it was an initiation fee, for example, you would say for new members, it's required. And for renewals, it's not available because they've already paid their initiation fee. But this is going to be optional for both here. And this down here is going to say not applicable always one, because if I try to make this adjustable, that conflicts with this. So if I try to make this adjustable, it says price and quantity may not both be adjustable. So if I said that this was like a T-shirt or something like that for an additional charge, then you say, well, how many do I want? So in this case, we're saying, no. This is going to be an adjustable price, and the quantity will always be one. And here's where we would say we want this to go into the donations account. And now, if I log out and I want to join, I'm going to do this hopefully very quickly. I'm going to go next, and I'm just going to put in Fred and Rubble, and I'm male, and 1900. A bit really old, and I'm going to just fill in a bunch of stuff here, and let's do this here. And if I go to next here, we've got a few things, because we've said in the member sign-up wizard that we want to have this information captured. 201 555 1212. And so now, almost there. So now it's saying, here are the things that are available to me as additional charges. Well, in this particular club, the initiation fee was required, so we can't uncheck that. But I can decide I want to donate to this fund, or I want to make a fly-in donation, and I can come over here and say that I really only want to give a $25 donation, and I can go next. So the difference here, or the building fund donations, the one we just put in, and so we have the suggested amount and the maximum amount. So this is a way of asking people for money, but it is not considered and tracked like a donation. It's going into your donation fund because that's where you said it's going to go, but it is not going to be included in the donation reports. It's just a charge that these people are agreeing to. But that is a way of soliciting for funds, particularly during member sign up and renewal. So if I cancel this altogether and I come back in as M. Smith, I'll just show you very quickly where that is set up. If we go into the control panel and we have the membership wizard set up, one of the questions here is on the additional charges. Do we want this available for a new member sign up, whether it be a regular member or an admin, and whether or not we want to present that during renewal for a member or an admin? So if we want to present that same screen when they renew, we would just check it here. If we want it for the administrators, we would check it here and here. So that's pretty much it for the donations. Victor, I haven't been watching the chat window. Do we have any questions pending?
There was actually only one question. Can a non-member donate anonymously? And the answer is yes. They will be listed as anonymous, as we saw. They can choose whether or not to donate anonymously, but they'll still need to input their information and be entered into the non-member database first.
Yeah, the system needs to know who's actually making the donation. When they say that they wanted to do it anonymously, that just means that they want it reported anonymously. So their name is not going to show up on the financial reports. It's not going to show up on any lists. It's not going to show up in any place where you would normally see it. But if you're accepting, say, a credit card payment, obviously we have to know who it's coming from. And so the same thing applies to any other type of payment. Oh, the other thing I just wanted to show you, and this was, I think, kind of a useful thing that people don't quite know. So let's assume for a moment that I was editing a fund. So if I click over here, and if I'm not sure what any of these things are, don't hesitate to click on help. So you can even keep the help screen up next to the window. So it's not like it's modal. You can actually come back here and say, oh, well, I'm looking at members only, and say, oh, this is what members only is about. So your first line of defense, whenever you're looking to figure out how to do something in ClubExpress, is to ask the system for the help. And we actually did some instrumentation on the help. I was wondering if people actually looked at the help, and it turns out people do read the help. And that takes a lot of pressure off, keeps you from scratching your head for a few things. And in the event that there's still something that you don't understand, then of course you should contact our ClubExpress support team. So unless there are any other questions, I thank you all for joining us. I hope you found this useful, and we will see you at the next webinar.